Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go. This stands to be a very eventful week, not necessarily an easy week, and I'll explain more about that. But basically, it's the last eclipse of the year that's coming up on Wednesday the 2nd. Today is Monday the 30th that I'm talking about. And so these couple of days before that solar eclipse are the dark of moon time, before the moon goes to new again, which traditionally is a time for new beginnings, fresh starts. I'll talk a little more about how that has a different color to it with this particular eclipse. But as for now, on Monday, the 30th, the moon is in the sign of Virgo, and the day opens with this sense of wanting to have correct partnerships, seeing who your allies are. Some of us may be feeling a little overtaxed, as though, why do I have to do all this myself? Where's my support system? Where's my team? And if this is an anxious or a stressful morning for you, keep in mind, how can I set things up or position myself so that things going forward don't have this level of stress to them. The moon in Virgo over the next couple of days is actually very well positioned for doing the clearing work we need to do, putting things in place to allow ourselves a sense of, this feels good to me, this no longer works for me, how can I do some things that just make my body feel better or my emotional state. That Virgo moon is well positioned with the planet Pluto, which gives it an emphasis on things that are therapeutic, healing work, detoxing, meeting points or parts of ourself that it's time to expunge or liberate from. And this is all like really super energy when we're in the dark of moon period. The dark of moon period is a time when, as the moon goes dark, essentially, and sky may be spectacular with stars, depending on where you live. This is a little harder to do in urban areas, and actually in our very lit up world, it's more and more challenging to find a real carpet of stars in the sky. But what it symbolizes, this dark of moon period, is we are in a state where we're finishing things up, deciding what we are going to take with us in the next lunar cycle, what we need to complete or shelve or not going to take for the next lunar cycle. So it's a reflective time generally. And this is enhanced depending on what else is going on in the sky, in this case, the moon being in Virgo. And in its movement, it's really well supported with a sense of, yeah, what do I need to move from, let go of, reimagine differently. As we get into Tuesday the 1st, October 1st, that moon is still in the sign of Virgo up until the late afternoon, early evening. And the best way to look at it is to continue with that soul searching if that's appropriate, or putting things to rest, clearing things out, setting things up for what you're planning to do in the next lunar cycle. And it can be just a time when you really address, what do I want to move from, purge, make better, because that's a lot of the energy that's supported with that Virgoan persnickety attitude of, nah, look at that a little closer. This is something that it would behoove you to do differently, energetically, and just be kind to yourself, essentially, and or other people in your life or work situations. The moon goes void of course at 5:39 p.m. When the moon is void of course, we really don't want to start something. It's kind of like dark of moon period, only even more so, because we're in this point of stasis, essentially. It's just work on things already in motion, purge out, don't overdo, and avoid starting anything that you want to see any resolution to. The moon enters Libra at 6:20 p.m., and so this sets up an evening that is thoughtful. It can be intellectually provocative. When the moon's in Libra, the energy is about, let's probe this, look at that, balance the powers that be. If someone's too far in this camp, let's see what that camp is saying. And I can't help but note this is the evening of the United States vice presidential candidate debate. And so I have written about that on my blog, and some of you subscribe already and will see that. Others, if anybody's interested, I certainly will send out a link at some point for those who want to read about it. But it's when we look at something like, how are these men going to do on this night, what we're looking at is, where is the moon, what other planetary aspects are transiting the people involved, and what is the potential outcome, the emotional weather of the individuals, and what might be the challenges or strengths. And that's what's best to look at any day, event, situation, opportunity that you're doing something. You ideally want to look for times that are good days, as I'm talking about. What are the good days? And also when you feel supported, who you are energetically. So the moon in Libra is an air moon. It's verbal expression. And depending on the candidate, anyway, not to give it all away, but for people, all of you in general listening, when the moon's in Libra, and we're going into that solar eclipse on Wednesday the 2nd. So it's a very charged evening, Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, when we have the solar eclipse, which is exact at 2:49 p.m., and depending on where you live, you might actually see that happening in the sky. If it's clear and not cloudy, it's not going to be a total eclipse, but there will be a darkening of the sky most likely, and you might see a little bite out of the sun, but you don't want to look directly at the sun. Anyway, this is not advisable. So, I always personally, I usually prefer just looking at the NASA movies of eclipses. It's often much better filmed and visible than anything I've witnessed, although I have seen some really wonderful lunar eclipses especially. So, On this day, on Wednesday the 2nd, it is eclipses in general. What they do is they light something up, or they can, in the case of a solar eclipse, they can bring another texture to something that seems to be glaringly obvious. I mean, as I'm making this recording, I couldn't help but notice that the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, has been indicted, and that's a really big deal. I don't know his horoscope, but you know I'm going to be looking at it. So he is someone who is probably really feeling this eclipse energy. So with eclipses or new moons in general, full moons in general, you want to look at where is the area of life that this eclipse is triggering. What house does it fall in? Does it touch any of your personal planets or angles? And the eclipse itself is at 10 degrees Libra, 4 minutes. And all the eclipses of this year have been in the Aries Libra axis, except for the one on September 17th, which was late Virgo Pisces, very close to Libra Aries axis. And what I find interesting about this particular eclipse period this year is that it's introducing fire and air energy as we're going into 2025, which of course will have its own eclipse series. But that year is when the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, all move into air and fire signs. So we're doing this shift energy. And if you're one of those people who've been experiencing some confusion, some feeling a little unsettled, not knowing when the other shoe's going to drop, a lot of that is going along with this sense of things are finishing up or we're in a state of change. So the best way to utilize this eclipse is thinking in terms of, how can I get myself more adaptable to change and transformation? Can I allow that process to unfold? Now, the magic in doing it with this particular eclipse is we don't want to necessarily start anything new on the day of the eclipse. That's generally not advisable, and certainly this one, it probably is not the best idea unless something must happen, because sometimes something must happen, and that's the way it goes, and it's that way for a reason. Babies get born, deals come through, stuff happens. So the day of the eclipse is particularly charged. It can feel volatile. It can feel like a lot is going on, especially if it's very active, where it falls in your horoscope. The last time this eclipse happened, because it's part of a cycle, was 2006. So if autumn of 2006 stands out for you for some reason, the odds are that you'll be going through an echo. It's not going to look exactly the same. All the other planets are in different positions, and you're different. Time has passed. So the best way, as I said, is to embrace whatever the transitions, changes are up for you. And also know that, like the old prayer is, accept the things you can change the things you are capable of moving through. I'm not doing the prayer correctly, but most of us know it. And the main thing is the wisdom to know the difference of the things you can change and you can't change. And with this kind of energy that's a lot about the transition we are in the process of experiencing, the eclipse can bring for you a revelation. Oh, okay, that's a direction to consider moving in. That's a place that maybe is finishing for me, or a situation, and that's a person I want to reach out to, or that is not working in the capacity I thought that they would work. I'm noticing that Rosh Hashanah, according to my calendar, begins at sundown. Blessings to those who mark that. And on Thursday the 3rd, we're still in that eclipse energy. And the piece about this eclipse, one thing to note on Thursday especially, is midday, early afternoon, we can be presented with an opportunity or a situation that actually is a good thing and can work out well. How that's going to work for you is something only you can determine. You're the one who knows, is this like more than I can do? Is this going to be a fit? Is this the missing piece to the puzzle? And once again, with the eclipse just having happened the day before, we may not want to take action right away. But it's definitely valuable to follow up anything that's presented in this capacity, because it could very well end up being something that gives you a lot of benefits. But it's important to explore it more and know it more dimensionally. This can be especially true for people who have a lot of air in their horoscope, Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini, and possibly people who have a lot of fire, Leo, Sagittarius, Aries. If you know what's going on with your horoscope, this really helps. And a lot of the benefits come from where Jupiter is moving through the sign of Gemini, and Jupiter will be going retrograde in less than a week. So that's why the idea of acting on or taking action really is something to look at, and we want to look at it much more closely when we get to October 4th. Because on October 4th, the moon goes void, of course, at 6:40 a.m., and then it enters Scorpio at 7:22 a.m. Once that moon has entered Scorpio, which Scorpio isn't everybody's like, oh, this is my happy place. And yet, because of the intensity of the energy of this week, for those of us who were paying attention and are kind of raising our hands and saying, okay, I may not like it, but I can hear that maybe certain things have to change, and maybe I need to look at some things differently. This is a really powerful weekend to sink into that. We can take the fuel, the catalyst energy that cracked open with this week's eclipse, that we're in the waxing moon cycle, and now with this moon in Scorpio, we are cruising along with a nice wave of energy that's really supporting growth, transformation, opportunities, opportunities you can't quite imagine, actually, because they're different. It's not that they couldn't be opportunities that you've considered or you've been courting, but the level of what can happen has really jettisoned. And that is for the people who are like buckled your seatbelt and did your homework and said, okay, I'm signing up and I'm going for the ride, even though it might be kind of scary, new, and not necessarily what I really want to do. But that's where we're at energetically. I mean, just, you don't have to be paying a lot of attention to the news cycles, to what's going on in neighborhoods, on the earth, in various situations, that there's a lot of upheaval and push for something new. And with that, of course, comes the release of what has been. So the moon in Scorpio on Friday is inviting in that sense of, okay, how do I put myself in a position where I am stripping down to the raw material that I need in order to move into this place of being that I'm ready to go into, even though I don't know exactly what it looks like. So with the energy of the new moon solar eclipse, it's really important, as I said, in those first couple of days of this week, to have pared down to the essence of what you consider important in this lunar cycle and beyond. So yes, there's things we all have to do, go to work, feed ourselves, our family, whatever's going on in our lives. But then there's other things that are calling to us that basically it's as though there's a tapping on the watch that's just saying, is this happening? Because if it's not happening, it's totally okay and appropriate to just strip that layer off. You don't need it. It's not fitting, it's not going to work, and it's just holding you back. So that's the beauty of entering into full lack of resistance on Friday the 4th. Another thing that's really lovely is there's a picture in the sky between Venus and Saturn that offer a lot of support systems for those of us who are ready to sign up for that kind of transition. Might be, as I mentioned earlier, a new person or new people or a new situation coming into your life. Maybe someone you've been hoping would recognize or come forward or respond. Who does? You get that, yeah, right, now I have time, let's put it on the calendar. That would be lovely. Whatever it is, or maybe you pick up the phone, and this is something I mentioned to my husband. Leos, it's so hard, they reach out, nobody responds, and they think, oh, they don't love me, they don't like me, they're not interested. And I just reminded him, people are super busy. There's a lot going on. And there's a lot of, we message people, we Facebook people, we We text them, we WhatsApp them, we email them. Like there's all these ways, and stuff gets lost. So a phone call, forget about that. That's like even more, wow, a real phone call? It's kind of like getting snail mail. So anyway, I know this is a side conversation, but it's really not, because I'm looking at Venus trine Saturn. So if you felt discouraged in the past about someone you were trying to reach out to, especially someone who you envision as being part of a project or something you're building towards, reach out. Reach out, especially as we head, in the morning into early afternoon. And you might be surprised. You may not get the response right away, but there is that lovely juice in the energetic field that says, oh, this time they might actually get that message and say to themselves, oh, all right, I have to respond to this. Saturday the 5th also has that moon in Scorpio. And overall, I'd say this looks like a pretty dynamic day to me to buzz along, get things done, work on if you're working on something that requires a lot of focus, research, heart, passion, wow, what a day to be doing this, as was Friday. And it's really quite delicious how one can be in the zone and just make all that, uncover all that. If you want to deep dive into a relationship, have a romantic weekend, really get to know someone very dimensionally, whether, lover, friend, time with a person that you just don't get to spend a lot of time with. Really great weekend for that kind of depth of knowing a person and revealing yourself. Sunday the 6th, what's happening is that, here's how it builds. The moon goes forward, of course, at 6:52 p.m. Eastern Time. So the day is still in this high opportunity vibe, but here's what you want to be aware of. In the morning, as we get into the early afternoon, it's really important to be aware of where you are in space. A lot of people are buzzing around, they're distracted by this, they're looking at their phones, they're not paying attention to what's going on with their physical body as they move around. So driving in a car, being in transit, even walking or dancing, you want to be aware of who's around you and where you are in space. Once we get past early afternoon, from 1:09 p.m. to be specific, to 6:52 p.m., when the moon goes void, of course, we're in this lovely envelope of opportunity. And this is so precious because we had a challenging week of the eclipse. And as I mentioned earlier, Jupiter will go retrograde as we get into next week. So this day, Sunday, if you can reach and grab for that opportunity, that brass ring, that person, that benefit, go for it, because it's a moment in time that we can embrace. And even if it's just about being in stillness and appreciating your quiet and yourself, that's a beautiful gift as well. Have a lovely week. A good and powerful eclipse utilized well. You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.